Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me this morning for our webinar, Email for Mobile Phones. My name is Jill Bastian, and I'm the Training and Education Manager here at Vertical Response. Just a couple of things before I get started with the webinar. This one is going to be about 40 minutes long, and at the end, as we always do, there will be time for Q&A. So if you think of some questions along the way, go ahead and type those into the box that you see in your GoToWebinar window, and I'll be more than happy to answer as many of those as I can at the end of the webinar. The question we get asked the most, and I'm sure some of you have heard me say this probably more than once, is this being recorded? And the answer is yes, I am recording this. I will have it up on our recorded webinars page on the help site later on this afternoon. So if you want to go over some of the stuff that we cover today at a later date, you'll be able to do that with this. We'll also send out a follow-up email that has a link to the recorded webinars page as well. So with that, excuse me, let's go ahead and get started. So these are some of the things we're going to go over today. Some basics for creating emails for mobile phones that you're going to want to keep in mind when you're setting up your emails. I have lots of tips for what you should be doing with your emails to make sure that they're working well on mobile phones. And I have lots of examples as well so you can see what they look like on phones. As usual, I have a resources slide, so some things that will help you along the way. And also, of course, there will be a Q&A. So here's some stats to keep in mind when you're creating your email campaigns. Mobile phone users are usually not going to be a huge amount of the people in your mailing list, but as mobile phones get more popular, there will be more and more people who start reading their emails on mobile phones. A lot of the things that I'm going to cover today are actually things that you should already be doing in your email marketing. And I know that a lot of you aren't because I look at emails going out through our system. So not only is the information that I'm going to cover today going to be really useful for creating emails that work well on mobile phones, but in general, it's good email marketing tips. So this should help you with your emails in general. Another thing I'm going to mention right now while we're looking at these stats is that there is some special coding that you can put into the HTML of your email to make it render on a phone. I am not going to talk about that today because I don't think everybody out there, one, understands HTML or CSS. This is actually a tag that you add in your CSS. And two, not everyone on your mailing list is going to be receiving an email on a mobile phone. So you don't need to do special HTML or special CSS coding for your emails to work on a phone. You also have to keep in mind that what you're doing with your emails is also going to impact the inbox recipients who are looking at an email just using a basic email client, Gmail or Outlook or whatever they're using. So the tips I'm going to give you today will work for mobile phones. They'll help them look great on mobile phones, and it won't impact the recipients who are reading your emails on a regular inbox, regular email client. That's the word I was missing there. One of the things to keep in mind as we're going over some of the tips that I'm talking about today is that a lot of mobile phone users are going to triage their inbox. So basically, they're going to go through the emails that they're getting on their mobile phone, and they're going to respond to whatever they feel is urgent or important. A lot of times that will be work-related emails. They'll delete anything that's in their way or anything that they don't want to see, and then they'll save the rest for later. Your emails probably won't fall into the former category. They probably won't be urgent if you're sending out marketing emails. So you want, at the very least, for your emails to make it into the second round so that they can look at it when they have a little more leisure time. Maybe they're at home on their computer looking at the inbox of the emails that they saved. So you want to keep in mind that the small amount of time that you have your recipient's attention when they're looking at their inbox, you need to have the important information there so that they're going to want to take a look at your email later if they don't have time to look at it now. So a few things to keep in mind. Of course, they're looking at an email on a smaller screen. So you want to make sure that you're not going crazy with the design. You don't want lots of huge images or your email to be just images. You want your message, especially your call to action, to be very clear. You have a smaller space to get your message across to your recipients, so make sure it's very clear. They know exactly what they need to do, and you get it to them fast. If you've attended any of our webinars in the past, hopefully some of you have, you've heard me talk about the 80-20 rule. When you're designing your email for mobile phones or for any regular client, the 80-20 rule means about 80% of your email should be text and 20% should be images. And when you're looking at mobile phone usage, this rule is going to be more important even than for the people who are looking at an email just in a regular client. Not only do some phones, most phones or email inboxes will block images until the recipient turns them on, but if you're putting in lots of huge images, that can really cause a problem for your recipients to see the important information if they're looking at it on a mobile phone. So again, the 80-20 rule is important. And I'm going to talk a little bit later, a little bit more about images in your email. And keep the important information above the fold. So that means before they have to start scrolling. You want to make sure that the point is at the beginning of your email so that your recipients can see that when they look at the email on their phone. So I'm going to go into some more specifics for the different parts of your email now. So we're going to start talking about the subject line and the from label. You have probably heard me talk about this before. The subject line and from label are the two most important pieces in your email. No matter what device your recipients are reading an email on, this is what gets them to open the email. On the next slide, I have a screenshot of what the from label and subject line look like on a cell phone. But to keep in mind the different components of the subject line. So if you look at the top image, the left one is your from label. This is what gets your recipients to know who's sending the email. So you want that to be something that they recognize. It's really important for them to know who's sending the email, and generally speaking, it's going to be your company name, not a person's name. The subject line is the next part, and then as you can see in the example here, this is a good place to put whatever your call to action is. Whatever the specific point of your email, you can use that for your subject line. Most subject lines, no matter where you're looking, if you're looking at an email client like Gmail or Outlook, it's usually about 40 to 50 characters. It's a little bit less, but not too much less for cell phones. I'm going to show you what that looks like on the next slide. And then on the far right is the pre-header text. Now we've been talking about pre-header text quite a bit for email creation. Pre-header text is basically the first line of text in your email. And a lot of email clients, not all of them, but a lot of them will pull the pre-header text or the first line of text into the subject line, and that's what the pre-header text is. It's called pre-header because usually people will put information above the header of the email, so it's pre-header. If you look at the example at the bottom, you can see where the subject line and the from label are on the left-hand side, and then on the right-hand side there's an arrow pointing to the pre-header. Now this is an example of what the subject line, from label, and pre-header text looks like on an email being opened in Gmail. So the pre-header text is the first line of text there in the email. It's really important to help get your recipients to open your email. So as you can see, it's kind of a supplemental piece of information in the subject line area if you look at the screenshot at the top. Now if we go over to this next slide, you can see on my screenshots at the bottom of this slide, the pre-header text is suddenly a lot more important than it was even on the previous slide. And pre-header is great to help get people to want to open your email. It's just additional information that they want to see. So if you look at the screenshots at the bottom of this particular slide, on the left-hand side, and if you look at both of them actually, the large bolded text is the from. So that's the sender of the email. The person on the left is a writer. He's an author, so that's why it's his name. That's really his company name too. The one on the bottom right is the name of the company. So those are the from labels. The next bolded text is the subject line. So as I said, most email clients, if you're looking on a PC, regular standalone kind of email clients, the subject line is about 40 to 50 characters. When you're looking on a cell phone or a mobile phone, it's around 30 to 35. That's what you're looking at right here. If you count everything in here. So all the characters, including the commas and the spaces, all count. Um, this is about 5 words. If you're thinking about how many words you would be able to put in your subject line for just a regular email client, that would probably be about 6 or 7, depending on the email client. They all vary, but it does give you some limitation to how much information is going to be displayed in your subject line. So the subject line is really important that you front load, as I have on the slide here. So that means putting the important information at the beginning of the subject line. If you're having a sale, put that first. In case it gets truncated, at least your recipients can see what the point is for your email. If you're having an event, put that at the beginning. If you're a nonprofit and what you want to do is get people to donate, give them a reason to do that at the beginning of your subject line. Then anything that's maybe not quite as important can go at the end of it, and for the people who have lots and lots of room in their subject line, they can see the rest of it. Now, in these screenshots, the really important part is the pre-header text, which is actually all the information that you see below the subject line. These are screenshots from Janine, our CEO. She took some screenshots for me, and she actually shows as much as she can for her pre-header text, because this is part of how she triages her inbox. She wants to see a lot of pre-header information so that she knows if she's going to keep that email or read it or whatever she's going to do with it. So the one on the left really doesn't have any pre-header text, but it does take the first line of text in the email, which is part of the opening paragraph. Because this person is a writer, this is a great start. It's pretty compelling to make you want to see what's going on in the email, that it just starts off with the beginning of his email. The one on the right, you'll notice the pre-header text says, if you are unable to see this message, click here to view. To ensure delivery to your inbox, please add your email address. Click here to learn how. Invite friends. This is not really, really compelling text. So things like forward to a friend, add an address book, click to view in a browser, you probably want to rethink where those are going to show up in your email. The top of the email is some pretty valuable space these days. So you might want to consider moving those to another part. So if you have like a column in your email where you have kind of administrative stuff, like maybe where people can contact you, or if you put that at the bottom of your email, this could be a good place for you to add things like forward to a friend, click to view in a browser, so that the space at the top of your email is freed up to use pre-header text. And again, this is exactly how it works when people are looking at it in just a regular email client, not even on a mobile phone. So again, thinking about what's at the top of your email can have a big impact on how people are reacting to the email when they're looking at it in their inbox or on their mobile phone. Now, as I said, there's a lot of pre-header on here. This one is about 140 characters total if you are looking at the subject line and the pre-header text, which is a lot of information. Again, the subject line, though, will show about 5 words. So keep the really important information at the beginning and then the additional information in your pre-header text. So let's go ahead and start talking a little bit about images. So as I said, I would talk a little bit more about this. So people who are viewing emails on a phone have to download those images just like your recipients do when they're looking at it just in their regular inbox. So you want to have a good balance of images, and you don't want to use huge images no matter how your recipients are looking at the emails. A really large image takes a while to download, and not everyone has high-speed internet connection all around the country. And especially people using a mobile device, they're using Wi-Fi, and that can sometimes be pretty slow to load. So remember that your recipients have to wait for your images to download. So there's some things to keep in mind. Again, Keep the important information in the text of your email, and the text at the beginning of your email should have the really important information for whatever it is you're trying to get your recipients to do. Try to avoid having a huge image at the beginning of the email. If you're looking at it on a phone, it's really hard to find the pertinent information if you just have this big old image at the top. The other thing to keep in mind, which I have at the top of this slide, is using alt text. Again, we talk a lot about using alt text because email programs, by default really anymore, will block images until the recipient clicks a link to allow them to show up. So you want to design your email to have images and text, and that any important data is in the text, not actually written on the image. You can have it in the image, just make sure it's in the text. And alt text is what shows up behind your image if it's being blocked. So if you look at the bottom of the screen, I have a screenshot here of an email where the images are blocked. And this company has a tendency to send out emails that are just images, but it works for them. Generally speaking, we don't recommend this at all. But one of the things they do really well with their image emails is, if you look at the bottom where my green arrow is, the text that you see written there where the sale information is, the time and the date for the sale, how much you're going to get off, the percent off, is actually alt text to the image. So even though when I opened this in my email program, I had the images blocked, I have no idea what the image says or what the image is about, the alt text here is telling me exactly what I need to know. So when you're creating your emails, be sure to use alt text. It works for your recipients who are viewing it on a cell phone as well. So if they are blocking images, which they could be because it's harder to see them or it could take a while to download, the alt text will help your recipients know what's going on. If you have, for example, your logo at the top, that's a great place to put your website. So verticalresponse.com if you were looking at ours. That way your recipient, even if they're blocking the images, know that they've opened the correct email and they know what they're looking at, so that it has your company name there in the alt text. The rest of the images, put what you think will be compelling, something that will get your recipients to either click to your website if that's what you're trying to get them to do, or something that gives them more information about what's going on in your email, like in this example here. The alt text is just telling me exactly what the image says, and so I know what's going on in this email. Now, when you're using our system and you want to add alt text, when you go to put the image in, whether you're using the wizard or the canvas tool, once you've selected your image, there will be a properties window that pops up, and that's where you can adjust the size of your image if you want. You can put some spacing around your image there as well. And then at the bottom of that window is the alt text box, and that's where you can fill in this information. So again, this is really important regardless of how your recipients are reading the email, mobile or on an email client. So another thing to keep in mind when you're creating your email is the width. Again, cell phones obviously have a smaller window to view the emails on, so you don't want to have a really wide email. But also, for anyone who is viewing your email just in a regular inbox, if they have to scroll back and forth to read it, that gets really difficult, and they'll give up and go on to something else. So no matter who is reading your email or how they're reading your email, the widest you really want it to be is about 600 pixels, or maybe like 640. You'll notice 640 is twice 320, which is what the iPhone average screen width is. So that goes down very easily for them to be able to see it. Excuse me. But most people, when they're viewing their emails on the phone, can either look at it vertically or horizontally. It kind of depends on the person. I did a lot of research before this particular webinar, and a lot of the information out there about mobile phone use says that people view it horizontally, but I have to say, anecdotally, the people that I know who read emails on phones, both here at work and my friends, view it vertically. So keep in mind that, especially people using iPhones, because that's how the phone is generally oriented, so they're looking at their emails quickly that way. So it's usually going to be about 320, judging by most of the people I see using a cell phone. to read their emails. Now, if you're using the templates that we have set up in our system, they're already set up at about 600 pixels because, again, this is the ideal width even for looking at an email in just a standalone inbox, not just on a mobile phone. So you can use our templates either in the wizard or the canvas tool, and as long as you're not putting really wide images that might push them wider, you'll stay within the width that you need for your mobile phone readers. If you're writing your own HTML code, so if you're using our freeform or if you're writing it and putting it into the canvas, it's important to note that this is as wide as you want your email to go, is about 600 pixels. And again, it is something that we talk about quite a bit in our webinars, but we still see a lot of emails that are really wide. And again, it's so hard for your recipients to read if they have to scroll back and forth. So let's talk a little bit about links. We always tell you that you need to be linking in your emails because your recipients need lots of opportunity to get to your website to do whatever it is you're trying to get them to do. So if you want them to go to an event, to make a donation, to make a purchase, whatever you're trying to get them to do, they need links to get to your site to do that. On a cell phone, links are a little more difficult than just looking at a link in an email program. So you don't want to have too many links that are together because it gets really hard for you to be able to click on that. A finger clicking on the screen for their cell phone can take up to between 30 and 45 pixels, which is actually kind of a large area. That's usually about the size of the Facebook icons that you put in an email, for example. They're usually around 30 to 40 pixels square, and that's about how much space your finger is going to take up. So on the right here is an example of our newsletter on an iPhone. And we have a link to our website at the top, which is very important. Make sure that you're linking to your website at the very least. And you should be including lots of links for anyone who's reading your email. Just try not to crowd them too much. You'll notice a little further in our paragraph here, there's a couple of links that are close together. That's going to be a little harder for people using a mobile phone to click on. But at the bottom of the paragraph on the left is a link that stands alone and a link at the top. So those are really easy to get our recipients to click on if they're looking at it on a mobile phone. Now, on the right side of this is our table of contents, which is great for people who are looking at an email in like Outlook or Gmail or wherever they're looking at it. It's a little tougher on a mobile phone, but what this can help do is get our recipients to say, oh, there's some great content in here. When I have time to read this email, I'll go and read the article on whatever it is this link is. But the links on the right-hand side, I think, are a little close together for someone to be able to click on easily with a mobile phone. So one of the things to keep in mind when you're creating your emails too is just how, if it were you or if you're picturing your recipients doing it, how easy would it be for them to do what you're trying to get them to do. So it would be pretty frustrating if there were a lot of links close together and you're trying to hit one and you just can't do it and you keep opening up the wrong window. So if you want to make them go to your website to do something, make it easy for them to do. And speaking of making it easy for them to get to your website, call to action buttons. Again, something we talk about a lot, but call to action buttons become really important for people who are looking at your email on a mobile phone. Not only should your call to action be really clear, especially for the people using a mobile phone, but having a call to action button also makes it really easy for them to get to your website. And it makes it easy for anyone who's reading your email, no matter how they're doing it, to get to your website as well. It tells them what they should do, and then they click it and they can go and do what you're telling them to do. An easy way to create your own call to action button is at performable.com. If you go to performable.com/buttons, they have a button generator there, and you can set it up to look pretty much how you want, and it can say what you want, and then you can take a screenshot of it and use it in your email. The example I have at the bottom of this page, if you look at the top left, that's actually showing their pre-header text. And just like in a subject line, their pre-header is front-loaded, just like a subject line. So even if a particular email client only shows a limited amount of the pre-header, they have the limited time, which will get people to do something quickly because they know they only have a short time to do it. And then say 15%, that's at the beginning of their pre-header. It works with their subject line. And then for anyone who can see the pre-header, this is going to get them to want to read the email. There's additional information later in the pre-header, which is also in the email itself. But the promo code may not show up for the pre-header, but the 15% off, which will probably really draw more people than knowing what a promo code is at the very front. So this is a great way to set up your pre-header text as well. The top part of this email is written only in text. And the great thing about this is, even though there's images below this, which you can see it just a little bit in my screenshot, even if images aren't being loaded for whatever reason, the very important part of this email is the sale. It's a limited time, and there's lots of links that you can click on to get to these things that are on sale. And if that wasn't easy enough, there is also a call to action button there that says, if you shop and save, you'll get 15% off. You can click on that button and go right to their website where you can go and get your deal. Now, if you've, again, been to any of our webinars in the past and heard us talk about call to action buttons, if this is something that you're not using in your emails, this is a great thing for you to test. And as you probably know, email marketing has lots of opportunity for testing. We can tell you, generally speaking, how people will react to things in your email, but your recipients will react in a specific way, and they're your recipients. So if you send some tests, you can find out how they react. We haven't always used call to action buttons in our emails, and we tested this out last year or at the end of the previous year, and found that people really like to click on buttons. It's easy for them to do, and we had a 26% increase in our click-throughs just by including a button for people to click on, in addition to a link for them to click on. I'm not saying that you're going to see an increase like that if you put buttons in your email, but it does make people want to click on them. They're big, they're colorful, they tell them exactly what they should be doing. So most people react really well to the button. So that's something that you can test out in your emails. Another thing to keep in mind is that, again, because people on a cell phone are using their fingers to click on things, you want your button to be big enough that they can click on it, and you might want to put a little extra padding around it. So if you're creating your email using either the wizard or the canvas, when you go to put the image in for your button, just in the properties window that comes up, the same one I described earlier for the alt text, where the space boxes are, you can just put some spacing around it so that it's easier for your recipients to click on, because nothing's going to be running into it. This is an example of our call to action buttons in the VR newsletter. So if you look at the very top, we always link the title of our newsletter so our recipients can click on that and go read the email, the rest of that article if they want to. And there is another link in there. But we also give them a read more button that they can click on as well to go and read the rest of the article on our website so they can see what's going on, and we tell them to read more. Here's the same newsletter on an iPhone, and you can see in the smaller space how easy it is to catch those call to action buttons. They're a bright color, they're big. I can even see exactly what I'm supposed to do even in this small space. It says read more. That makes them really compelling for people to click on. So I would encourage you to have a call to action button in your email. And you want to keep in mind that you're trying to get your recipients to do a certain thing with your email, whatever your call to action is. So don't confuse them by having lots of different call to actions. And then they won't know what to do. So give them one or two buttons to click on, and they'll go do what you want them to do. So another thing to keep in mind is scrolling. So as I said earlier, you want to keep the pertinent information in your email at the top above the fold, so before they have to start scrolling. You have a limited amount of time to get somebody to interact with your email if they're looking at it on a mobile phone, or even if they're just looking at it in their inbox. So make sure you're giving them what they need to know at the beginning. Again, so above the fold, you should have the important information. People who are reading their email on a mobile device probably aren't even giving their emails their full attention. So you have to get to the point quickly. Make sure your brand is easy to recognize. So again, if you're going to include your logo in your email, you don't want it to be huge, but you want your recipients to know that they've clicked on the right email when they're in their inbox. So have your logo at the top. Again, put in your alt text the name of your company. If we go back here, oops, I hit the wrong button, sorry. Oops. If you look here, we have our VR logo at the top. So even if somebody's not sure if they've looked at the right email, they'll know once they open it because the branding up at the top. So in our header there, we have the important information that they know that they're looking at the right email. So just make sure your branding is really clear. Let me get back to where we should be. And again, keep it simple. You have limited time. Make the information easy for your recipients to find. Text version. So I've talked a lot about images and using alt text and putting links and call to action buttons. Not everybody looking at an email on a phone is going to see the graphical version. And not everybody looking at an email at their inbox on their computer is going to see the graphical version. So a text backup is really important. When you're creating emails in our system, they're sent out in what's called multi-part MIME. So there's a graphical version and a text backup. And we are automatically creating a text backup for you. Basically, we just take the text from the graphical version of your email to create the text backup. You can edit this, though, and I would encourage you to do that, especially for the people who are reading it on a mobile phone. But you want to make sure it's really easy for anyone looking at the text version to read, because they don't have the luxury of having images that are breaking up a large chunk of text. So if you have a huge paragraph and that's just your text backup, nobody's going to want to read that. So break it up into smaller chunks and put links in there to make it easier for your recipients to get to wherever you need them to go. If they're going to go read more, give them a link to do that. In our system, if you're creating the email using Freeform or Canvas, at the top where the tabs are for your looking at the preview or looking at the HTML or any, the little tabs at the top under the toolbar, there's a little box that says auto-generate text backup, and you can uncheck that box and you can edit your text backup. In the wizard, you can still edit your text version, but you just need to go to where it says email options above the toolbar and then uncheck the generate text backup automatically, and you'll be able to go in and make edits to your text version. So let's go take a look at the text version and what it should generally look like. So if you look at this text example, it's just one or two sentences for each paragraph. There's plenty of space between them, so it's easy to read, and there's a link to each section to go read it. At the bottom, again, these links are probably a little too close together for somebody on a cell phone to be able to click on a specific one. So make sure that your links have a little bit of space in between them, or go in and edit some of those out because they're not going to know what those links are for unless there's additional text around them. So if you go in and edit your text version, no matter how people are reading your email, they're going to see a good, informative text version of your email. So last but not least, creating an email that works on mobile phones is a great and it's a pretty important thing for you to be able to do, or at least think that some of your recipients are looking at emails on a mobile phone and give them some things that will work for them. But mobile phones need some other things in addition to just good emails. So you want to make sure that your website or landing pages, wherever people are going when they're clicking from your email, are also mobile friendly. Specifically, if people are using iPhones, which if you remember the stats at the beginning, the majority of them are using iPhones or iPads to look at their emails. You don't want to have Flash on your website because Apple doesn't play very nicely with Flash right now, or Apple products don't play nicely with Flash. So if you have a nice email that works really well on a mobile phone and you have your recipients click a link to go to your website, which is then got Flash on it, your Apple users aren't going to be able to really do much with your website. So start thinking about how you can set up your website to work on mobile phones. We recently recently redid our website. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but verticalresponse.com has a new look. And when we did this, we included a link at the top where people, or I'm sorry, it's at the bottom of the page, where people who are viewing it on a mobile phone can click a link. So we're not specifically sending our recipients to a mobile-friendly page because they can certainly make that choice. But we do have a specific page set up. And I know that a lot of our customers are small businesses, so I'm not saying that you should go out and do this. But if you have the ability or the bandwidth to do this, this is something that you can do. And these are screenshots. So if you look at the right-hand side, this is our mobile site. It is set up a little bit differently. It's set up vertically instead of horizontally like it currently, like the non-mobile one is. And there's tabs at the bottom to read about the different products that we offer instead of just links along the top like we have on our regular site. So we do have it set up for people who want to look at it using a mobile phone. And then on the left-hand side, we also have a special sign-up form for anyone who's signing up through a mobile phone as well. So again, it's something to keep in mind is your recipients are still going to be looking at your website when they're going through your emails as well. So just for a recap, remember text backup is really important. Not everyone sees the graphical version on a mobile phone, so make sure it looks good. Keep your email slim so that it's easy to read on a phone and it cuts down really well. Also, for anyone looking at it in any regular email client, you want to have a fairly slim email as well. Branding is very important for your emails in mobile phones, so make sure you have a good logo, and even if the logo is being blocked, your alt text says who you are. Use call to action buttons, and again, remember the top of your email is going to be really important for the people receiving your email and reading it on a mobile phone. So here are some resources. As usual, we have our vertical response marketing blog, which has lots and lots of information just in general for email marketing. We did write a blog post a couple years ago now about designing your email for mobile phones. So you might want to go look for that. That's under the email marketing category. Our help site has lots of information on how to do the things that I talked about today. So adding pre-header, there's information in there on how to do that. Adding images to your email, how to set up alt text, all of that information is available at the help site. We have lots of guides on our guides page, and one of them that you might want to check out is our testing 1, 2, 3. So if you're interested in testing some of these different pieces in your email to see how your recipients respond to them, this has some tips on doing that. There's also going to be a guide for mobile phones next month. And that will be included in the Buzz newsletter. So if you are subscribed to our newsletter, you'll know when that one comes out. Otherwise, just look next month. And again, if you're looking to do call to action buttons, the easy way to do it is from performable.com/buttons. It's free. You just need to take a screenshot once you set up your call to action to say whatever it is that you want it to say.